modeling. How did that happen? How did you get into that?
This is hilarious. So it was back in the day, right? I don't know if you watch any of those shows about like elite models. There, at least back in the day, there used to be scouts that would go into like small towns in Eastern Europe and Brazil, villages where this would happen. And one of them set up shop in a mall that was closest to my town. It was elite model search, and my best friend really wanted to go. I thought it was kind of stupid because I just got my first job in a mall, which I was so excited. I made like a whole like euro 70 an hour, less than 2 euros. And I was genuinely proud. I was happy. It was like, okay, I'm building something. And the competition or the modeling search lasted for about 3, 4 days. And on day three of the search, I got fired from my job at a mall. And I guess I told my friend, I was like, okay, I guess I'm ready to go now. I was crying my eyes out. And I met her one floor down at a modeling search. And yeah, I guess that was one of the major turning points. And the
Sl
rest is history.
sliding doors moment, right? Like it just
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
And I never thought about it. It's not something I necessarily wanted to do, but it happened. I'm a genuine believer that when one when you have a crack in a door somewhere, even if it's a different direction, you might as well explore it because you don't know what's behind it.
Right. 100%.
Hmm. And what's so interesting now, I don't know if it still works the same way, but now with social media, the internet, like you can find people online or apply online. Yeah, that was not my world back then.
It's crazy how everything's transpired. Like, you've got social media and all these, I guess, apps and things where it's just the world's so
Yeah,
connected now, all right?
yeah. There's good and bad. Also, like the the previous ways before we've had this, it had a certain charm to it. Because I can tell you if it was like, oh, if I had to apply somewhere online and somebody reached out to me on Insta, I wouldn't go for it. I'd be like, yeah, I don't know what this is.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, does that happen often? Do you have a lot of people now reaching out to you and DMing you and
Yeah, yeah, I do. And obviously I read it, I like glance at it. If it's something interesting for sure.
cool. Um, all right, tell me, you've obviously been in magazines. Is there been like a pinch me moment where you were just like, wow, I can't believe I'm in this magazine or this is happening? Can you, yeah, share a story or a time when that really you were just like, wow, this has happened?
I guess all of them,
Sure.
all of the major ones, I think not even the major, for me, it's not even like, okay, I see the magazine. For me, it's the day that it's happening. Like I always get like the tingling feeling whenever I see like the rack of clothes coming by. I was like, oh my God, it's gonna happen. Then I have like people coming, like the team. Photo shoots have a lot, usually a wide team. There's an assistant, then there's light guide, and there's hair, there's makeup. They have assistants. And when I see like it's just the chaos of the day, that is like the pinch me moment. Like I still have that. I was just like, oh my God, I'm really doing this. And then to this day, I don't want to say I get nervous, but I still feel extremely humbled. Wow, okay, this is happening. I'm a center of attention here. That's
Incredible.
one of those. And when usually like when I see like a magazine cover or a campaign or like I see myself somewhere, it's like a product of the day. Like I remember the day was like, oh my God, this makeup artist was so cool. I wonder how's Nancy doing.
It's incredible.
That's what goes through my mind when I see it.
Wow. Wow. And how do you think you've matured since obviously you first started to where you are now? How do you think you've actually, yeah, matured?
Matured?
Yeah.
I haven't.
We're all kids still at heart.
I
Uh,
think. I don't know. I think there's beauty in preserving like your playful side. I would say I matured in a way that I'm not. I used to be very naive and very gullible. Like I used to believe everything and everyone, and I'm like, oh my God, really? This is happening now. I guess I lost it a little bit. Now I like take everything with a grain of salt, and I don't take everything as seriously. Like when it comes to like maybe in meetings or like a brand reaches out to me with like we would love to have you. And I'm like, okay, like contact my agent, and then I don't think about it until it actually happens. Yeah, I guess when I was a teenager, I'd be like, oh my God, this is happening. Let's go.
Right? Yeah, yeah. Completely understand.
You could say that could be mature, sign of maturity, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me about the shoes. How did that happen? And that's incredible too.
Thank you. Where it started,
Yeah.
when I started working as a model, obviously I grew up in a small town. I was raised only by my mom, and we both loved fashion. She was like my style icon. We didn't have a lot of money, and my mom worked like multiple jobs, but she would always look like $1 million. She would go into like thrift stores, and she would have it altered. She like put something on it, and she would like sew things and adjust it herself, and she would always look incredible. And she would get inspirations like from the magazines and the runway shows, and we would watch it. I think that was one of my inspirations, that my mom was so into it. And I never thought of myself of being in that world. It was just something that would mesmerize me. But I wasn't one of the girls. I was like, oh, when I grow up, I'm gonna be doing this. Not at all. And when I've had one of those like pinch me moments when we would watch like, oh my God, the Chanel runway, this is happening. Oh my God. Or one of the things I was saving up my money to get an Escada perfume. I don't know if you're familiar with the brand, but there was like a big European luxury brand, and the only thing I could ever afford is the perfume. And I still had to save up for that. And those are both of the brands I ended up working for. And then oh gosh, one of those, there's such a story. I ended up working working for this brand Escada, that I was saving up my pocket money just for their perfume. It was the only thing I could get, and I ended up working for them. And when I met their team, I started crying. I just like, oh my God, like I used to be obsessed with you guys. Like you have no idea. Like it took me like 3 months to save up my pocket money for your perfume. And I did that. And then they were so touched that they sent me the entire collection. And I saw it with like a handwritten note. And to this day, like I started bawling my eyes out. And I cherish it so much. That was one of those moments. And that was a very similar thing with Chanel. And this is a very funny story from the shoot, because they sent it from their runway collection, obviously for the editorial, for the lookbooks, and it was shot in a beach, and this was couture and like the shoes. But this was couture, like the shoes and suede and bags, and they asked me to like go in the sand. I was like, I don't wanna. I can't because it will destroy the shoes, you know?
Right?
Like if we just go, it was like sweet. I'm like, oh, really want me to go into the sand? And they were like, yeah. And they would ask me, like, can you go a little bit into the water? I don't think I can. I like had so much respect for the craftsmanship and for this work. Like I still have the little girl inside of me that couldn't afford it. And it was just something that was always so unreachable and so far off to the distance. And now you're asking me to essentially destroy these things just for a couple photos. And yeah, that was one of those. I've had few of like moments like these. I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm touching it, and you guys want me to wear it and roll around in it and treat it like it's no big deal. And that's where I I wanted to create something on my own that had similar quality, but it wasn't at the price point that it would be so unreachable for so many. Obviously, it's not the same prices like the fast fashion because just the materials and labor, I couldn't do that. But I have the same sources of leather or fabric as some of these tier A brands. And yeah, I assemble it on my own. This was something that I just did for like the little girl inside of me. It was just like, okay, like how can I bring these two things together? And I even get criticized when it came to dealing with some other partners that my margins are not that high and gonna have issues scaling it down the line or get funded. And I didn't care. Like I don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
This is something I did for myself.
good on you. That's amazing. How hard is it to actually start I guess a shoe business essentially? Like, is it incredibly hard and difficult to actually do it? The background of it. Obviously, we'll see the shoes and obviously celebrities wearing all these kind of things. But how actually hard is it in to actually get it off the ground and running?
Those are two different questions.
Sure.
Is it hard? Is it hard? If it's hard starting a shoe business, no,
Yeah.
it's very easy.
Sure.
Taking it off the ground is such a pain in the ass. I feel like in today's times where we live, starting a business is incredibly easy because now you have like Google, you have all these things. Not that it wasn't back then, but the companies weren't necessarily registered. You can reach any manufacturer. You can send an email. Now they have their own social media, and you can reach them incredibly easy. And like if you send them designs, like it's very easy. Get the point by like getting it off the ground. I guess what has changed from the times now you have so much competition that you didn't necessarily have there before. So getting it off the ground is very hard. Like figuring it out. To this day, I still don't feel like I figured it out. Pandemic changed a lot of things. I had a one showroom in LA and one in Paris. Then pandemic came and I'm like, oh my God, I'm bleeding money. This is bad. And yeah, I've restructured and I have a lot of other exciting things with the business that I'm working on now and figuring my own way how to adjust and how to be more predictable, how to easily transform into the current times and adjust and transform. So that's something I'm working on now and I'm still figuring it out. The back ends of what I'm thinking. But yeah, I have a clear path. So I feel like that way of like getting it off the ground, even when I see with other brands, it's never ending. Because even if you look at like, okay, then the examples of like what I can think of like if you think of like Louis Vuitton or anyone from LVMH, from Tiffany's, yes, obviously they're off the ground, but then your challenge is to stay there. How do you stay relevant? Okay, how do I stay in a position that I am? And then maybe you don't have a competition of 1,000, but you have another top 50 brands that are like you're getting like constantly. Like, okay, you're here, but then other brand is here like next quarter. And I'm like, okay, how do I catch up? So getting it off the ground is one thing, but then there's also another challenge staying there. That was something I also battled myself because I was at a point with the brand where I got it off the ground. And now, oh my God, everyone wants it. And now, like, my production didn't arrive in time. And it's like, oh, fuck now. Because now the retailer doesn't want it anymore. And now I have all these inventory that I'm like, okay, so now it's on me again. And now I lost a relationship with like massive retailer that would again bring me to another level. And now I lost my credibility because of shipment delays. So it's constant battle and it's never like this that you go You just go up. It's like, okay, you get a little further, then something happens, you're down here. And how do you go back here? So that is my perspective. And also I have a lot of insight of what I see from what other brands go through because I have a lot of relationship with different brands, different designers. So I see and I hear what they are going through. And for example, they're so much further ahead than me because I couldn't afford to hire myself, if that makes sense as a
Yeah.
model.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is such a unique perspective. I was like, oh, I can't afford myself. Obviously, I do it for my brand, but if I were to hire a model on a same level, I can't afford it. So that's another perspective that I have, and I'm like, oh shit. Well,
Yeah, it's very challenging, that's for sure. I can just imagine, as you said, like you'd always have these different angles of stress and things, that you're trying to maintain.
yeah, it is. But I always say like it is with any industry. It's with any industry, and like it's also how people perceive you. What I would say, because people always love to tell me was like, oh, I know modeling is not easy. And I always say, actually is. It really is like actually having the job and like now you show up in the morning, you get into hair and makeup, you get through the day. That part is super easy. For me, it's like a mini vacation. What is the hardest part about it is getting the job because that requires you to travel, sign to different agencies, to different markets, living in a shitty apartment, then not having the stress of like, okay, like how am I gonna survive? Then doing a bunch of shitty jobs for free and like building your portfolio, like getting into another side of town, then you are in minus. And that part is incredibly hard. And that's where a lot of people give up. But once you are that like, okay, now great, I have a high paying job, like, yeah, that's easy. I would do that all day, every single day.
All right. What do you want your legacy to be?
What I want my legacy to be, that's an incredible question. I thought about this an extent, and what I came down to is that I don't need to change the world, but if I can change the world for just one person, that's all I need.
Amazing. What would you give to younger a younger person that obviously is similar situation to you, coming from where you have initially? Um, what advice would you give them, or what's the best piece of advice you would give them?
Don't be afraid to fuck up.
Love it.
Because, and the second thing I would say, you'll never be ready. There's no such a thing as being ready. Like if you wait until, oh, I'm ready for this now. I've learned there's no such a thing. Like even if you start something new, like no matter what you do, it's always gonna be shitty when you start. Like if you want to be like, I don't know, in finance, like you gotta have the longest hours for shitty payday, fetching coffee to someone and like doing the most menial work. So I think it's with any industry. Don't quit at the beginning. And it's only gonna get better.
Right. Couldn't agree more. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Um, Great question. That would be very stubborn on your goal and your vision, but very flexible on the details on how to get there. Because once you plan every single step of how you're getting somewhere, it's never gonna go like that. I don't think with anything I've ever tried to do, it ever went according to plan.
Right. Nothing's ever the way it transpires the way you vision it. Like there's always these challenges, and you need to be incredibly flexible and move and be agile with
Yeah,
things because if you're not, it's not going to happen, or it's going to be very difficult because you need to be incredibly flexible.
yeah. And I think I learned the hard way. I wasn't always a flexible person. To this day, I struggle with it, but now I became more self-aware. It's like, okay, well, I'm taking a detour. That's fine. Yeah.
Definitely. And what I've learned too is you need to, obviously life's short and you need to enjoy it. So try not to stress on it and just go, this is just a detour. I'm just going to enjoy it because at the end of the day, nothing's ever going to be perfect, regardless of the way I want it to be. This is the way the world is. So just enjoy it because you're only here once. So
So true.
100%. If you were 18 again and you could go back and change anything, this could be personally or professionally, what would you change?
I don't think anything. There was so many, like everyone, I went through so many shitty things myself. There's been hard times and fucked up things happened. But it's one of those things I would be worried that like, okay, if I change this thing, or if I got what I wanted back in a day, like for example, I missed out on incredible things. Like they're they're either I was up for like a motion picture movie, and I was up for a lead, and it happened. They were like looking for exactly like Eastern European girl with an accent, and this would like change the entire trajectory of my life. I think I would have changed that. That I was like, oh, they would actually end up going with me.